Hey guys, just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to SiDEBAR Forever. If you like the show, please subscribe to us at sidebarforever.com, as well as share episodes of the podcast on your social media. That way, new listeners can find us as well. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Today's podcast is an examination of mentor movies. The story usually goes something like this. A new and inexperienced person enters an established world. They get taken under the wing of a charismatic teacher and are either made better by it or worse, or both. In some cases, the new person entering the world is the charismatic mentor or teacher, and they have to be the change agent to the established world. And then we have the hero's journey, where the hero needs the mentor's help and guidance to prepare them for their destiny. In our conversation, Swain and I discuss a plethora of films that demonstrate these tried and true dynamics, such as Wall Street, The Devil Wears Prada, Whiplash, Coach Carter, The Karate Kid, Doctor Strange, Akeelah and the Bee, Dead Poets Society, Rocky, Men in Black, and many more. And also, we take a few minutes at the end to recognize some very special mentors in our own lives. I'm Adrian Johnson. Swain and I don't throw darts at a board. We bet on sure things. Read Sun Tzu's The Art of War. In it says, every war is won before it is ever fought. And today, it's the war between the teacher and the student as we discuss mentor movies.
It's interesting, man, thinking about these mentor movies.
Yeah.
I was just doing a little bit of research and doing a little bit of reading, and these movies have been around for forever, and I guess it's kind of a go-to dynamic.
I think so. Yeah, sure.
You can go back to like Mary Poppins, Eliza Doolittle, even to some extent like Blackboard Jungle with Glenn Ford.
Sure.
Was it Glenn Ford?
Yeah.
Was it Glenn Ford? Yeah.
Yeah, it was Glenn Ford. Yeah.
And it kind of runs it in different ways, but and these have been lampooned and parodied as well, over the years, because these are very message conscious movies. They tend to be for the most part, although there's a variety. But Wall Street,
yeah,
the Devil Wears Prada, Black Swan, Whiplash.
Yeah, you could also argue in a way Platoon is as well. He comes into this world and he almost has two mentors. As a matter of choosing which one, because he finds something in both of them, to admire and to follow to help him through that situation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Tom Berenger's character and Willem Dafoe's character kind of both end up being like almost like the good angel, or the on one shoulder and the bad devil on the other shoulder, kind of mentor figures. But you've also got like Coach Carter, Good Will Hunting, The Color of Money in 1986.
Yes.
Remember the Titans, Denzel.
I'm gonna throw one out at you,
Go
man.
Go ahead.
Do you remember The Mechanic from 1974 with Charles Bronson and Jan Michael Vincent? And they remade it. Jason Statham and Ben Foster.
Sir, I have been seeing that movie pop up on online and on cable.
Yeah.
In association with Jason Statham. And I did not remember that it was a remake.
Yes.
So, okay, yeah, I do recall seeing Bronson and Jan Michael Vincent, JMV.
Yeah.
But wow, man. But others, and these are all, they all kind of fit into one category or another. But Mulan, Dangerous Minds, which is kind of its own category as far as like Great White Hope mentor movies,
right,
to some extent. Ratatouille, The Karate Kid.
Oh yeah.
Doctor Strange.
Oh,
You know,
really?
yeah, Marvel's recent Doctor Strange, Akeelah and the Bee,
Yeah.
the Dead Poets Society, which is a real favorite. Rocky, The Matrix, Star Wars, Men in Black, and there's probably tons of others that we're not remembering. But I'm trying to remember. You tell me, man. I'm trying to remember the first time I really realized, oh, okay, this kind of a movie. This is a thing. This is a familiar story and a familiar kind of a plot that they trot out every few years. And I was aware of it as a moviegoer and as a budding cinephile, if you will.
I'd probably say I got the first inklings of it, as you intimated with the Karate Kid, and if you grew up with like martial arts movies as well, that genre is replete with master, teacher, student, grasshopper. You know what I'm saying? You could also go back to Kung Fu. with Kane, David Carradine and all of that. You know what I'm saying? It's always the thing of, looking for someone to teach you. You have the skills. Oh, and let's throw Last Dragon in there as well. He's searching for a mentor, and he finds out that he, in fact, is his mentor, in a weird way. But I digress.
Right.
But yeah, man, it's all about you have the raw skill, the raw ore to be mined in order to become at your greatest potential. But you need someone, a change agent, if you will, to come in and to show you through the struggle, through whatever, that this is what your destiny is. And that may seem highfalutin, but a lot of times it does seem like that's a destiny that's a struggle to reach for, but that character, that neophyte, that student has to reach some way, somehow,
Yeah. I was thinking about Wall Street, with Gordon Gekko and the Bud Fox character.
Yes.
And, to some extent, you've got, the mentor, mentee, student, teacher kind of dynamic. It's a real part of the hero's journey.
Yes.
In Campbell's hero's journey, you have the hero who doesn't realize that there's a call to greatness yet. They live in the ordinary world. They get called into the extraordinary world, and usually there's a mentor figure of some kind.
Yeah.
Who's there to kind of coax them and kind of get them on their way, give them the tools and the attitude and the lessons that they need to get them on their way. And we see great examples of that, or obvious examples of that, in something like Star Wars, and also in to some extent in The Matrix.
Oh, sure, of course, yes.
Some extent in The Matrix, but like in Wall Street, Bud Fox is not on the hero's journey. Not really. I mean, he's our protagonist, I guess.
Yeah.
But he's a money chasing scumbag, just like the rest of them for the most part. He's materialistic. He gets turned. Let's say he gets corrupted.
I still think in some way he still follows that kind of callow youth that you find in a lot of those movies. Like, he has this idealism. Yes, he is money grubbing. He's ambitious and everything, but he is kind of callow to how the real rules of that world work. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's thinking, oh man, I just got to go and see my hero. Like they always say, don't meet your heroes. You know what I'm saying? But he goes to meet his hero, and his hero says, okay, you want to come in? All right. And there's a great scene in Wall Street where Gekko formally invites him in, and he's steadily trying to push him away. Like, kid, you don't want to do this. You ain't about this life. And Bud Fox like, I am. Yes, I am. And Gordon's like, okay. And it's very stagey, but I always love that scene. The lights go down. There's thunder outside. He's like, okay, you're in. Let's get to work, And so that's Bud's entree into that world, and the stakes get higher and higher, and he starts to succeed, and he starts to see how everything works before his mentor is like, you messed up. Off you go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, you can only learn so much before the teacher or the master can't instruct you any further. You have to continue that journey for yourself.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember, what was the dynamic, the reason why Gekko, was it because Bud went to him and kind of pleaded his case to, hey, teach me learn me, as my great grandfather would say.
Yes, a bit of that, and then also you find this in a couple of Oliver Stone's films. You know, there's that dynamic of two father figures. You know, obviously with Charlie Sheen, his actual father, Martin Sheen, plays his father in the movie. You know, so with Gecko and his father, what happens is that Bud Fox, he ends up, you know, Gecko is like, I'm showing you the game, but you're not giving me nothing. You know what I'm saying? You're not showing me any ambition or drive. So he says, okay, I got a hot tip. And he kind of uses his father's company to turn over to Gecko and say, if you buy stock in this, it's a good buy. Get stock in this, boom. And it ends up almost ruining his dad's company. You know?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And his father, the other father figure, the other mentor in a way, has to kind of pull him back from the abyss. It's like he tells him several times, he warns him, man, Gecko is just a snake in a suit. You don't know what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? He said, no, I got this, Dad. I got this. You never believed in me. And then the tables are turned, and his dad ends up having a heart attack. And Bud Fox, you know, Bud is like, man, you were right, Dad. Damn, I should have listened to you. So sometimes it's a matter of what that mentor is teaching you, and if that's the correct way, you know?
Right. Yeah, now that's coming back to me, and I do remember that. I certainly remember all the impassioned pleas from Martin Sheen's character as Bud Fox's dad, saying, "Hey, you know, don't get drawn into this guy and into his web. You know, like you said, he's a snake in a suit." A slightly different dynamic that I find was in The Devil Wears Prada, where Anne Hathaway's character Andy could really care less about this fashion world that she's in. She ends up with this personal assistant job for, you know, the editor of this high fashion magazine, Miranda Priestley, played by excellently by Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
And she could really care less. She dresses frumpy. She and her boyfriend live in kind of a dumpy New York apartment, and they don't have a lot of money, even though, you know, they're living in New York, and you know, they both presumably are paying off student loans, but and maybe that's why they don't have money. But, you know, she just dresses very drably, and, you know, in these kind of blocky shoes, doesn't really care about her hair or anything like that. Everybody who's anybody would kill to have this gig that she has, and she doesn't really care about it at all. And she has this, Meryl Streep's character is very, very, like, you know, about what she's about. She's not paying attention to the peon, so to speak. You know, every day, every moment she's on a mission to do her thing.
Yeah. And
she can tell to some extent in her brief interactions with Andy that Andy doesn't really respect this world. And they have a big confrontation where she says, you think these two colors of green are the same? And she talks about how, you know, it started on the runways in France, and then it came to New York, and then it goes to all of these high fashion stores, and then it gets picked up by all these mid-range stores, and then the same color shows up in some drab little sweater that you found in a Goodwill box, you know, blah, 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 blah. And you think that fashion has nothing to do with your world. It has everything to do with your world. And even throughout the movie, as the Andy character, who slowly starts to, not at the prodding of Miranda, but just as being sucked into the world, she slowly starts to change like Bud does.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Miranda is still kind of unaware of her. In other words, she's not really, really, really on Miranda's radar. And she actually, it's almost like the moth being drawn to the flame and then getting burned up kind of a thing. Which I thought I think The Devil Wears Prada is a great movie. And again, Miranda is kind of like an unintentional mentor to Andy, because Andy didn't even see her as a mentor and really even see that industry as something to strive for until she kind of was sucked into it. And then she loses her boyfriend, and she loses her best friend. Her best friend was played by an actor named Tracy Toms.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've seen her on many, many things. She stays busy, and she's awesome. As a matter of fact, we're Facebook friends online.
Ah, cool.
And
cool.
and she loses her best friend, she loses her boyfriend, and she kind of loses, you know, her own kind of, her own self-respect to a great extent. But
Yeah.
the mentor relationship in these movies is oftentimes kind of like what we're describing here. It's almost like parent-child, Bud Fox and his dad. It's parent-child, it's teacher-student, it's doctor-patient.
Yeah.
It's God and man to some extent. I mean, when you look at something like The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves and
and Al Pacino.
And Charlize Theron, where it's deity and the creation of the deity, and I guess the function of the mentor to some extent is to help prepare the student for the challenges that are ahead, for in the situation that they're going into. So, I don't think I've ever seen all of Coach Carter. Have you ever seen it all the way through?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, from what I know of the movie, and from what I've seen, and it's funny, just a quick side note, the main thing I remember about this movie was after Sam Jackson did it and he was doing promo, and so he was on the junket and they were asking him, well, how did you like working with all the young actors? He was like, it's all right, it's cool. He says, but they don't really have any skills. And she was like, what are you talking about? He says, they don't have any skills. They're young. They don't really know how, a lot of them didn't come. And, in this movie, Ashanti was in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, not only do you not have any acting skills, you got non-actors trying to, freaking act or whatever. But the other thing is like Coach Carter, Good Will Hunting, Dangerous Minds, Akeelah and the Bee, and Dead Poets Society. These are mentors where it's not so much like they're the big fish in the big pond. They're the Gordon Gekko on Wall Street, the king, one of the masters of the universe. These are people who are mentors, but they're doing it out of a sense of duty.
Yeah.
The call to duty and to honor their calling is what has brought them to this place. So, I like a character like, I think it was Thomas Carter in Coach Carter, Sam Jackson's character. Even in Good Will Hunting, which is a fantastic movie. I mean, every time I see it, every time it's on, for it to not have a really like a lot of action or a lot of really big dramatic pieces, there are just certain scenes that stay with me, like when they first meet and he starts talking shit to Robin Williams. Robin Williams jacks him up, because he starts talking about Robin Williams' wife, his deceased wife. When Robin Williams meets up with the, I think it's Alexander Skarsgård's character.
Okay.
Who's like the rich, famous kind of a guy from his class who went on to greatness. And Robin Williams is kind of working obscurely in this kind of, small Boston college or whatever. But that scene where they meet in the bar and they talk about him, he's the kid's from Southie? What? But that was a situation where clearly Will, Matt Damon's character, is the smartest guy in the room when it comes to math. But Robin Williams, as his mentor, is trying to teach him how to kind of break open the inside part of him that he's hidden away, And
Yeah.
And then also like Akeelah and the Bee, where, and it's an example of, and this is the reuniting of Lawrence Fishburne and Angela Bassett.
Yes.
From their what's love has to do with it? Yes.
What's love got to do with it?
What am I doing, y'all? I'm trying to fix the English up.
You can't get him, hey? But go ahead.
Right. But he plays, Larrabee. He plays her coach. The spelling bee coach. And then she goes on to compete. And this was an example of someone who is called to a world and ends up finding a mentor to help them get to where they want to go. You know what I mean? The mentor didn't bring them into that, so to speak. She found him, and then he helped her along the way.
Now, what's interesting about that? You mentioned Fishburne, it's interesting that he's had 3 major roles where he's played a mentor. You have obviously Boys in the Hood as Furious Styles. And so he's not only trying to show his son the right way, but he actually talks to the other neighborhood kids and youth. about gentrification and so forth. Then then you obviously have, Akeelah and the Bee, as you're saying. And you also have the Matrix, once again, trying to instruct this callow youth who does not understand the potential that he has that is latent beneath the surface. He's trying to bring it to the surface. And a lot of times that's what a mentor does in these types of movies. It's like you have this bucking bronco, right? The bucking bronco, it can run fast. It's just a Mustang. You let it out the gate, it's going to run till it's exhausted. The mentor is there to take this Mustang and say, conserve your speed. If you run at this speed, you'll conserve energy for when you really need it. I'm trying to open up your horizons here so that you can understand the potential that's inside of you and bring it out. And that's the other thing too about these type of movies as well. It's a great way for exposition to be given about a situation or a world that we as the audience are coming in. So it's almost a dual purpose. It's almost like we're behind the back of the mentee, the student. So we're walking with them. We're sneaking behind them into the club to see, man, what's going on here? So we're seeing stuff as they see it. And there's exposition being given. All right, well, you want to make sure you don't do this because over here, it don't go down like that. You know what I'm saying? So we're being given the instructions as the mentee or the student is. And I think that's an appealing part. That's a vital part of the appeal of these type of movies. We're finding out as that student finds out,
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point, man. The idea that from a storytelling perspective, sometimes I guess you would use the mentee as a way to explain to the audience what's going on.
Right.
Or in some cases, you might actually use the mentor to explain to the audience what's going on. And especially in a situation where the mentee or the student or the pupil is actually entering into a world that the filmmakers and the storytellers know the audience doesn't know much about. So as Akeelah finds out about, spelling bees and finds out that she has, that this is a skill or this is something that she wants to pursue, she learns as much as she can, but she learns even more as she is brought into the world of Larrabee, Lawrence Fishburne's character. And similarly, like you're saying with The Matrix, where basically, Morpheus is explaining to Neo, but he's explaining to us too.
Correct. Yeah.
And this is probably 20-something minutes into the movie. So we've seen a lot of freaky shit go on in The Matrix prior to, that final or that one moment where they meet in the room and then they end up on the mountaintop and it's the red pill or the blue pill and all of that happens. So Lawrence is explaining to us what's going on. Much in the same way, like with, to some extent, Luke had two mentors. He had, Obi-Wan Kenobi at first, Ben Kenobi, who kind of talked about, your father and flying and being a pilot and I think he mentions the Clone Wars and the New Hope and, and other things, just kind of getting kind of shades and pictures of it. And then Yoda comes along later on, and Yoda is there also to explain more about what the Force is and the Jedis and so on and so forth. So they're used as devices to kind of explain to us who don't know anything about this world, hey, this is what you're about to get into, and this is what our hero, our main character, is about to get into as well.
Now, that brings up another point in several of these movies. There's a point to where the mentor can no longer teach that student or has taught, pretty much everything that they can. So they have to exit the story somehow, be it either by a death in the movie or some other way that they have to exit so that the hero, the student or the protagonist has to proceed by themselves, and I find that also to be a very vital component that we as the audience, go into. It's almost like, when you're learning how to ride a bike and you've had the training wheels on, you had your mom or your dad right beside you. You got it. Okay. And then one day, here's the day we go take these training wheels off. I want you to ride down the sidewalk. I'm going to be right here. I can't go no farther with you. you got it though. And then you got to take that ride. And that's very satisfying because you've seen the struggle. You've seen the travails of this protagonist to get to this point, to learn the skills, to get the potential, to believe in themselves, so that the mentor says, I can't teach you anymore. You have to go the rest of the way. And when they do, when they satisfy that, oh, it's great. It's great.
Yeah,
that's why it's such crowd-pleasing movies like that, like The Karate Kid and so forth.
Yeah, man, you almost sound like you were talking about The Matrix, where at one, toward the end of the movie, where Morpheus says, he is starting to believe, he's starting to believe he can actually ride the bike, and that he doesn't need the training wheels. And I remember, man, when I was little, I don't know if this was this way with you when you were learning how to ride a bike, but when I was coming up, what they did was I rode with the training wheels for a good long while.
Yeah.
And then my mother told my father, raise the training wheels up so that they're not touching the ground, so he doesn't know.
Yeah.
He thinks the training wheels are there, but the training wheels are not there. And then, when I rode up to my father, I'm like, he's like, you did it. And I'm like, what? And then he said, look at the training wheels. them are just sitting like 2 inches off the ground, but I'm not paying attention. So you're exactly right, where it is a thing where the mentee or the student or the pupil reaches a point where they can't be taught anymore. And, even as Darth Vader told, Obi-Wan, we meet again at last, the circle's now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Right. I always loved that line.
Yeah. I butchered the phrasing on that, but or the paraphrase on that. Yeah. But that's pretty close to it. But yeah, some teachers, like you said in The Karate Kid, like Mr. Miyagi, they are reluctant to take on the mentee. They're reluctant to take on the students. So, Daniel LaRusso was his character name, right?
Yeah.
He comes and, hey, teach me, because he sees Mr. Miyagi lay waste to the Nazi punks, the kung fu Nazi punks who were beating up on Daniel. And he's like, teach me. And Mr. Miyagi is kind of reluctant at first. Similarly, in Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange's character, as in the comics, his hands are badly damaged in a car accident. He finds out about some kind of a healer over in Nepal or wherever. And so he travels over there and, he's trying to get, the Ancient One. And I think Chiwetel Ejiofor's character was, what's the other character? Who's a villain, actually. Brooding Face, Mordo?
Baron Mordo. Yeah.
Mordo. He's playing Mordo. And, they're like, nah, go back to America, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he has to kind of convince them. And then eventually he does kind of convince the Ancient One, played by Tilda Swinton, to go ahead and take him on. But, like, there are other kind of reluctant mentors. I'm trying to think back. Tommy Lee Jones's character in Men in Black.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where he's kind of reluctant only in the sense of he's lost a lot of his desire and his connection to the world that he's in. He's, he lost the love of his life years ago. He's really kind of ready to retire. He doesn't have that fire in his belly, doesn't have the piss and vinegar in his belly like he once did. And so Will Smith's character comes along and he's like, okay, I'll go ahead and take this, this brash, cocky kid on and have him, learn to do what I do. But he's basically doing it so that he can hand the reins to Will Smith's character and kind of go back into the regular world and be ignorant of all of this.
And it's interesting, there's a saying that often a good teacher will learn as much from the student as they will instructing the student, Mm-hmm. So a lot of times in these type of movies, you will find that, as they're beginning to show this student or the mentee the way that their characterization starts to come out, that they start to either the facade that they have, that tough exterior, breaks down piece by piece, so that we, the audience, and the student start to see, okay, he's not just this implacable, instructor. There's a heart behind there for the most part, not always, but it's something to where Maybe the teacher learns how to love again. Maybe the teacher finds a passion through this student that was latent, and now showing this student has reawakened it, so thus you're learning as much from the student as you are instructing them. And so at the end of the movie, they always say at the end of a movie, the characters should be different. They should be in a different place than from where they started. And you find that with the example that you mentioned in Men in Black, the tables have turned so that the neophyte now is experienced, and the old head, so to speak, has left him with enough and learned now he can go back out and rediscover what he lost. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Another great example of that particular kind of an outcome is Antoine Fisher. Derek Luke and Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that particular movie, Derek Luke's character is he was an abused child, grew up in the system, and was abused all of his young life. And so he's got a lot of anger issues when he joins the Navy. And so they make him go ahead and see a psychologist played by Denzel. And, Denzel starts working with him, and little by little throughout the course of the movie, Derek Luke addresses his psychological and emotional demons as well as his actual demons in real life in the form of his foster mothers and foster parents and siblings. And at the end of the movie, when he goes back to talk to Denzel's character, Denzel's character throughout the story, just kind of hidden in the background, was having some marital issues with his wife. And so Derek Luke comes, I just wanted to thank you for everything you did. And he says, well, I want to thank you too. He says, this thing that's going on with me and my wife, I've been kind of ignoring it or whatever. And so, working with you has kind of, led me to the point where I realized I've got to work that out and I've got to address it.
Right.
And so, there was a change in the teacher as well as a change in the student by the end of the film. But
right.
Certainly it was Derek Luke's, movie. But other examples of teachers and mentors who really could not wait to either teach or / corrupt the student. Definitely Matrix. Morpheus was, his nose was wide open for Neo. He you are the one. I know you're the one. I've got to reach this person. So he sends Trinity to make contact with him and so forth.
Yeah.
In The Devil's Advocate, Al Pacino's character could not wait to corrupt Keanu Reeves and to tell him, all the stories about God and falling from grace and how God is, is a practical jokester and, and how, the whole world and the idea of living ethically is a facade, and this was Al Pacino in all of his Al Pacino-ness.
Yes.
Post Sin of a Woman, post Heat, Devil's Advocate came out in 97. So that was after Heat, right?
Yeah, so you get that yelling owl period.
And then of course the aforementioned Wall Street, where Gordon Gekko, once he really gets Bud going, it's almost like he's remaking Bud in his own image, like the analogy I made earlier of God and man. He's remaking Bud, to be his, like you're saying, his acolyte or his protege, his mini-me to some extent.
Exactly. And you can see that physically just by the way that Bud starts slicking his hair back like Gordon does, because before he had this very boyish, kind of haircut or whatnot. And then once he starts hanging around with Gordon and getting into the business, starts slicking it back, wearing the suspenders too, just like Gordon, and starts speaking the same lingo for sure.
To some extent, before that, he just had his hair cut.
Yeah.
And then at that point he starts actually styling it. He starts to want to project in a certain way, like you're saying, and starts mimicking Gekko's look and his his kind of own swagger. So
yeah.
But let's talk a little bit, man, about the some of the ones that take place in the classroom, because that is quite literally a teacher and a student relationship. But you see, again, your results may vary. You've got something like Remember the Titans in 2000, Dangerous Minds in 1995, and then you've got like Dead Poets Society in 1989.
Yeah.
Dead Poet Society is probably one of my favorites. Probably my favorite Robin Williams performance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was the first one. And I remember, again, I had my 2 VCRs set up. I rented Dead Poet Society, taped it on one machine into the other machine on a brand new high quality, VHS tape, which still looked like crap even back then. And it was in my library. And I remember being moved by it because clearly in Williams' case, his goal was not just to teach English and literature to the students, but he was there to teach them how to see the world, like see the world beyond what's in front of you, how to open your eyes, how to open your mind and be exposed to different things, to not be restricted by, the way your parents have raised you or, what the expectations of you, are in the world, and to actually reach inside of those kids. And he did that quite effectively in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, Captain, my Captain. And, the scene at the end where they're standing on the desk, it's just fantastic. And a terrific cast too. Ethan Hawke was in that cast. There were a lot of young actors, who showed up in that movie and went on to do, great things. But then you have something like Remember the Titans, and really Coach Carter, from what I remember too, the bits of it that I've seen, where it's a teacher kind of classroom dynamic or teacher-student dynamic, but the teacher is almost like harsh and like an asshole. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Also, too, in Whiplash. I don't know if you've ever seen Whiplash. Damien Chazelle's movie with
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons, yeah, he actually won the I think he won the Academy Award for that for Best Supporting Actor, and he is fantastic in the movie. It's a great movie. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend it. But but he plays this kind of really driven music teacher, and he's slapping people and hitting their hands and throwing cymbals across the room at the drummer, and he's just really just kind of a really like a taskmaster and just like an asshole. But Denzel's character was kind of that into Remember the Titans too. He was that black coach that we all had in high school or in grade school who just didn't seem like he just gave a shit or that he cared. You just wanted for a second for him to just crack that hardened exterior and, and show us something, underneath. And he just never did. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then the third example is Michelle Pfeiffer's character as the teacher in Dangerous Minds. It's, again, they're in the classroom and she's in this inner city with this, this mostly, brown and Latin kids, in her classroom, and she's trying to teach them, and she's using, the examples of like Bob Dylan and just other things where it's just like, okay. And this kind of falls into, I guess, maybe the kind of Great White Hope mentor movies. Mm-hmm. Which I think, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of a bit of a
trope.
Yeah, it's a trope for sure. It's definitely a trope for sure. But man, since these movies have been around for decades, do you think that there are cinematic takes on this dynamic that seem fresh, or were considered fresh at the time that they came out, maybe a little different?
Well, as you intimated at the top of the show, that type of dynamic has always been present in storytelling, not just movies, but in just storytelling throughout millennia, if you will, but within movies, I don't know. 'Cause, you've always had that kind of team up of, like I said, the callow youth or someone who is new to something, and someone has to show them the ropes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's ever been fresh per se, but the way it's been presented, in each decade has been something that's taken hold. Like, okay, in the 80s, that was replete with those type of movies. The 80s was like the apex almost of those type of mentor movies. In the 70s, it's something different. It's, let me bring you into this world and show you, what you thought was really going on, but this is what's going on, and that, mirrors what's going on in a wider, cultural sense of, let me expand your mind. You know what I'm saying? Either through medicinal means or get you to expand your horizons, man. You know, an outgrowth of the 60s and all that culture. And then in the 40s and 50s and the 30s and beyond and before that, it may have been something totally different. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, how do we traverse this society, especially the Great Depression? You know, you have something like Of Mice and Men. You know what I'm saying? Or that's a different dynamic, you know, because you have one leading kind of a weaker one through this life, but still showing him, but he's not going to get it. And that's the tragedy of it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, you know, The Matrix, just in how it's presented, that was a slightly different take on it. Although, you know, I could tell, you know, once we got to the point of him meeting Morpheus, you know, you knew right away, okay, this is just the hero's journey.
Right.
Star Wars, this is just the hero's journey. Men in Black, it was a little different because Will wasn't fresh and wet behind the ears, so to speak. He was just unrefined and raw. Yeah. You know, as a character. Doctor Strange, again, it was the hero's journey. Absolutely a prototypical hero's journey. The Karate Kid, from the first frame, you could almost see the crane kick coming at the end, even though you had never seen the movie before, because you knew it's a sports movie and it's a mentor movie.
It's you Rocky.
Know this. Yeah, it's Rocky. Yeah, it's Rocky.
Even the same director, John Avildsen, you know, directed both of those. So yeah,
there we go. And even with Rocky, I think Rocky, to me, is, as a sports movie, you knew it was going to end with a fight. But there was so much emotional stuff throughout the course of the movie. There was so much development between his relationship with Adrian and ultimately also with Paulie, and then with his mentor, with Mick. You know, there was just so much, you know, piano score playing in the background to kind of emotionally support the movie, that, you know, that felt like, yeah, it's a sports movie, but it also felt like something else, like almost like a coming of age story for Rocky, like a redemption story, I guess, is really what it was, along with being a sports film. But I know you're a Scorsese fan.
Yeah.
And I'm actually a pretty decent fan of Tom Cruise and Paul Newman. Yeah. What did you think of The Color of Money, man, with Fast Eddie and Vincent and him actually reprising his role from The Hustler 25 years later with The Color of Money?
Yeah, man. Color of Money, that's a great movie. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, the reason why I love it is obviously you have that relationship between Newman and Cruise. But again, it goes back to that dynamic of, like, you know, in martial arts films, or let's say in Kurosawa films, all right, where you have like this swordsman, this wizened, aged swordsman who knows the craft. He's the gunfighter, you know. And you have this young, you know, whippersnapper come along. It's like, man, I could get down too. I could get into this. And, you know, the swordsman is reluctant at first, like, nah. I've forgotten more than you will ever know. You're really about this. But he's like, no, teach me for real. And he sees the skills there. So he takes him under his wing and shows him. And, you know, with, you know, Newman and Cruise, he sees, like, this is that bucking bronco that I mentioned earlier. You know, this dude is preternatural. You know, he's got it. But, man, and going the distance, though, there's stuff about this world you ain't gonna understand. The politics of it. Why you gotta, sometimes it's not gonna work out for you. You know what I'm saying? No matter how good you are, how prepared, you know, I can show you all of that, but it's some things I can't show you that you actually got to learn for yourself the hard way. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's like that quote from Colors, where Sean Penn's character is talking to the older cop who's played by, I forget the actor's name.
Oh, Robert Duvall.
Yeah, how could I forget Tom Hogan? And Duvall says, tells him about the two bulls, and he says, one's just going to run down. He says, no, let's walk down and screw them all. It's like, okay, I know more about this than just, running into it and let's just get down.
Yeah.
It's about more than that. It's about, knowing the room and being able to read the room, so to speak. But kind of, I guess, somewhat of a last category would be the mentor-mentee relationship. And there's overlap with a lot of the films we already discussed, where the mentor is working with the student, or the teacher's working with the student, and they're trying to raise them to be great. And really, the movie is about, what are you willing to sacrifice to be great? So, we have that in Wall Street. We have that in a movie like Black Swan, which is really more of a psychological thing, where I think the actor's name is Thomas Cassell.
Okay.
French actor. And he's teaching, the girls in the New York company ballet. And he's mentally abusive, Same thing with J.K. Simmons' character in Whiplash. He's mentally and really physically abusive, and talking about, what are you willing to sacrifice? In other words, he doesn't see perfection as simply like a goal to get you advanced. Perfection is a destination, and he wants that from his students and from his musicians. And Miles Teller's character, he wants it bad. He wants it bad. And so it becomes about the sacrifice of his, not like I mentioned earlier with Andy's character in The Devil Wears Prada, about his self-respect, his relationship with his dad. It's almost like Wall Street, where you have the J.K. Simmons character, who is the Prince of Darkness, and then you have his real dad, who's played by Paul Reiser, who's doing the same thing that Bud Fox's dad was doing, saying, hey, don't get sucked into this. Remember who you are. Don't lose yourself in this. And of course, he ultimately does. Yeah. But and then even Denzel's character in Remember the Titans, where he's just harsh, He's just like, God damn, bruh, And I remember my high school coach. I wish I could remember his name. I remember one of my high school coaches, black guy, real tall, played basketball in college, never made it to the pros, of course.
Yeah.
And just was really like, he would just kind of just give us, this is what you got to do. And he just would never try to be friends with us. And then you always had those other teachers and those other coaches who would be friends. But you always wanted it from the one who wouldn't give it to you.
That's right. That's right.
So to speak. But mentioning some of the other films we talked about, the whole Great White Hope mentor movie, which, Dangerous Minds. I mentioned Blackboard Jungle.
Yeah, I was gonna say Hardball with Keanu Reeves, where he takes the little league kids.
Yo. Yeah. Yes, yo. Yes, yo. R.I.P. G baby, yo. Avatar.
Yeah.
Dances with Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
The Blind Side. The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise again.
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me go over here and teach these brown people how to fight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna lead them, so to speak. To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mm-hmm.
To some extent. And Finding Forrester, remember that?
You're the man now, dog.
Oh man. So anyway, before we get on and just start talking, I want to ask you about real life mentors in your life, and I've mentioned some on the podcast before, but would you consider any of the films that we've discussed in this sitting to be rewatchables, where it's like, if it came on, if you were still somebody who was flipping channels and it came on, you'd be like, oh, let me go ahead and watch the last 40 minutes of this.
Oh yes, always, because again, we as the audience, and I think people in general, whether we want to admit it or if we're able to articulate it or not, we really respond to those stories because, and I'll say it like this, and I'll narrow it down to young men. When we are as young men, we're always looking for our direction in the world. And you can say this for young people, but especially young men. We're always looking for that. Most often we're looking for a father figure as well. Some of us find a proper father figure. Some of us don't, But I think all people are looking for, just someone who's going to show them the proper way to go about life or go about something that they want to succeed in. You know what I'm saying? So those movies, that whole genre of movies will always be rewatchable for that reason. You know what I'm saying? We want to see them succeed as much as we would want it for ourselves to do the same,
Yeah. And even in the case of certain films where it's a mentor movie, but it's a cautionary tale. So something like Wall Street or even Whiplash, Devil's Advocate, even in a situation where it is kind of a cautionary tale, like you don't want to go this way, we still kind of, like you're saying, the yearning within to find someone who says, look, I don't know. I need to find someone who does know. Hey, will you help me?
Yes.
And I think that in living in modern day in 2021, one of the great things about the internet is, prior to the internet, it was really difficult for you to reach out to someone who had that, who lived in another state or perhaps even another country, and get advice or insight or tutelage or, God forbid, an actual mentor relationship from them. It was almost impossible. But now, you can decide you want to do something, get on a path, find out who are the people who've been on this path and succeeded before you, send them an email, go to their website, go to their blog, go to their social media, make contact with them. And maybe they might spend 5 minutes, in an exchange with you. Maybe they might spend 5 years corresponding back and forth, like, Alex Toth used to do with many a young artist and a young fan. But you can actually accomplish that now. And I think you're right. I think particularly with young men, and maybe because we're both men, that's why we feel it in the way that we do.
Absolutely.
But I think just people in general are looking for that teacher, someone to say, hey, here's a way you can go, and this is how you can avoid some pitfalls. This is how you can not lose yourself in this. But to kind of bring it to a close, man, who are some of the mentors that you feel like you've had in your life, and it's no relatives, no parents, there's got to be somebody that just came along and just seemed to be literally, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, kind of a thing.
Oh no, exactly, no, yeah. There's like a couple of examples that come to mind. As you intimated on numerous episodes of the show, when you were a young man, you worked in a grocery store as one of your first jobs, right? Same thing for me. Cub Foods, baby, 1998 through 1999. So, I'm working at Cub Foods. I'm a clerk, making my $6.60 an hour, and we get a manager that comes in, an assistant manager named, I believe his name was Mr. Stewart, if I'm not mistaken. And he was very taciturn. He was an older guy, very taciturn, you know what I'm saying? But you could tell that he meant business, and he was a mentor to me. And there was another guy that worked there named Daryl, who worked in the same clerk setting, with me as well. Between those two guys, just letting me know about how the world kind of worked. Because, when you're 18, man, you want so much to be an adult, but at the same time, you are so callow, you are so green that, man, you will fall for so much. And you don't understand the politics of what's going on in the adult world, man. And so you need somebody sometimes to appear and just to tell you, hey, before you do that, think about this. And that's what those guys did for me there, at Cub Foods. Just like, hey, don't go to management like that. You may want to back off and do this. Just do your job like this, but be wary of this and that. And then also, just in a more broader sense, there have been numerous teachers and librarians. Oh, man. There was and I might choke up here, so forgive me. When I was in grade school, when I went to speech therapy, because I had a terrible stutter, Terrible, absolutely terrible. My speech therapist, Miss Lockett, man, wherever she is, Miss Sonia Lockett, wherever you are, bless you, bless you. She saw something in me more than just being a student that she was trying to help get past this stutter, you know? Like, man, she actually helped me on, she found out that I liked World War II stuff, even at that young age. Like I was in the 3rd or 4th grade. And even though I was too young to enter the social studies fair at the school, she allowed me to enter that. She somehow got to the judges and whatnot and said, hey, this young man would like to enter that. And so do you know that we recreated the D-Day landings at Normandy with little army men that I had?
Wow.
We took some of the school milk cartons. I had, gotten some, I had saved them from when I would have them for lunch. And we cut the tops off and we took a piece of styrofoam, colored it, like did all of that, put real sand on it and entered that because she knew that I loved like World War II stuff, And I just thought that was so great of her, man. And the last time that I heard from her or talked to her was when I was in the 5th grade. I had changed schools over that summer. I had moved out to a whole other school district, away from where I was in the 4th grade. Do you know that she had actually tracked me down? And she came up to the school, the new school I was at. She came up to the new school that I was at, man. And she had gone to the Smithsonian for just a family trip or whatnot. And she brought these books back for me. Books on World War II. A sports almanac, stuff about World War II planes and everything. And I was just like, wow. I was like, oh man, so not only did she help me get past that impediment that I had as far as my speech and got me to, be more confident about that, but she actually remembered, what I enjoyed and brought that to me. And just, man, I must have read those books to death. I mean, I read the covers off of them, So she was definitely one of those mentors to me for sure that, man, I wish as an adult, I could just go back and, just truly thank her, man. I mean, she's Miss Lockett. If you're out there, just thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. That concludes this episode of Sidebar Forever, hosted by Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson. You can find us online at sidebarforever.com. Any emails or questions can be directed to us at sidebarforever@gmail.com. And also, subscribe to us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.